Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on ground source heat pumps and shared ground loop arrays. My name is Matthew Black. I am the Business Development Manager for Kensa Contracting in Scotland. I cover Scotland and North England as well. Cassandra, do you have anything that you want to say before we start?
Yes, I'll just do a wee brief intro. So I'm Cassandra from SFHA. Welcome everyone to this morning's session. I'm really pleased to welcome Matthew to today's webinar. For those joining for the first time, it's great to have you. And as always, there will be a recording of the webinar on our website after the session. And we'll also share the slides from the presentation. Before I pass you over to Matthew, just a few housekeeping things before we get started. So throughout the session, your microphone should be muted, but you can ask a question using the Q&A function on your control panel, which you will see at the bottom of your screen. You'll also notice your control panel has a chat function. Please use this if you want to share observations or thoughts with the other attendees, but don't use this for questions as they'll get lost in the conversation thread. That's everything from me. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the session. And now over to Matthew.
Thanks very much, Cassandra. Okay, so I'm speaking to you from a very dark and rainy Glasgow this morning. And I'm just going to start this presentation. So hopefully you can all see the slides in front of you. And we're going to run through ground source heat pumps and shared ground loop arrays for social housing. So I'll just make a start on that. So decarbonising heat in Scotland. So it's a really big challenge. Scotland's been very effective at decarbonising electricity in the past decade due to huge growth in wind power. As a result, our electricity grid is around about 90% renewable now, and that offers a real potential to, if we then electrify transport and heating, we can then, it's then possible to reach net zero by the target date in Scotland, which is 2045. And we've got some interim dates in there for 75% reduction as well. Scottish Government have announced 1.4 billion of low carbon funding. And also we are seeing what is effectively a ban the gas boiler regulations come into Scotland. So this will be from new homes from 2024, and also that will include other types of fossil fuel heating systems as well. We're primarily focusing on space heating and hot water today. 80% of domestic energy use is for heating and hot water. And we're not just concerned with decarbonisation, because as well as decarbonisation, we need to be mindful of fuel poverty in Scotland and keep fuel poverty, people's fuel bills down in addition to that. So that's what we're concerned with today. And first of all, I'll just run through a couple of slides with you on funding. So this is current funding opportunity for net zero heating in social housing. It's open until just before Christmas, and this is for existing housing only. So it's for retrofitting low carbon heating solutions to existing housing. The funding is 50%, so you can get a 50% grant for the capital costs, and you can also get a loan from the Scottish Government of 30%, leaving you with only 20% left to pay. And these projects must be installed and commissioned by the end of November, so quite a tight turnaround. There's also been the Green Recovery funding. Unfortunately, there was a deadline last week, so the fund is currently closed. But the reason that I'm showing you this slide today is that this funding will come around again next year. So it's mindful to think about that when you're thinking about property assets and fitting low carbon solutions to them next year. It's good to have a project ready to go. So when this is announced again next year, you've already made some progress. So a few words about the Kensa Group, who I work for. We started life as a ground source heat pump manufacturer about 20 years ago now. So we make ground source heat pumps and we supply them to heating engineers and plumbing contractors throughout Scotland, throughout the UK. Our factory and head office is in Truro in Cornwall. We also have a contracting business, which is Kensa Contracting, and that's set up to deliver ground source heat pump installations, focusing on retrofit and new build, mostly for social housing, also for private housing, and also some innovation around district heating, fifth generation district heating, and ambient ground loops, which we'll talk about soon. We also have a utilities company called Kensa Utilities, and that is set up to own ground arrays and borehole infrastructure, which we will go on to talk about. We were also on the BBC 6 o'clock news last week when Boris Johnson, the UK government, announced a 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution. And we were on the news talking about that, and that was specifically about one of our projects that we have down in Oxfordshire. So the UK government's committed to 600,000 heat pump installations per year by 2028. At the moment, there's probably, the figure is closer to about 15 or 20,000 installations per year. So a big ramping up to come. So I'm just going to touch on heat pumps. A lot of people will be aware of heat pumps, but just to give a sort of layman terms to start off, we all have a heat pump already in our house, in our fridge. So our fridge uses a heat pump, and what that basically does is that it gathers heat from our food inside our fridge, and it moves that heat to the back of the fridge and expels that into our kitchen. And that's how a fridge basically keeps our food cool. It's basically moving heat from one place to another. And that's the same for a heat pump. So for ground source heat pumps, what we're doing is we're moving heat from the ground. So we're collecting a large volume of low-grade heat. So that might be about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. We're collecting that, and then we're compressing that and squeezing that heat. And as we compress that heat in the heat pump, temperature goes up. So we can then deliver heating and hot water into your home. The main things to notice here is that we need electricity to run the compressor in the heat pump. And for every kilowatt of electricity we use, we can get about 3 or 4 times the amount of heat. So that's really important. The other important point here is that it's unaffected by air temperature. When we're collecting heat from the ground, that heat is between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius all year round, and so it's unaffected by air temperature, unlike an air source heat pump. So if you imagine in the depth of winter in Aviemore, on the coldest winter's night, we'll get down to -15, maybe even -20. For a house there with a ground source heat pump, it will be able to provide all the heating and hot water needs for that house, no matter what the outdoor temperature is. And that's not the same for an air source heat pump. That's completely reliant on air temperature. It's important to design heat pumps properly. Some social housing providers will probably have stories of heat pumps going wrong, and that's not normally to do with the heat pump itself, but it's normally to do with the way it's been designed or installed has been incorrect. So it's important to design these properly. And we're removing heat from the ground and putting that into your home, and then that is recharged through the year through rainfall, which then percolates into groundwater, and then the heat from the ground is recharged throughout the year. So when we have a group of housing to work on, we'll do some design and we'll do some sizing. We'll be designing the heat pump to meet 100% of the space heating domestic hot water demand. There'll be no fossil fuel backup from the system, and we'll also provide the house with a hot water cylinder to provide hot water for that. So boreholes and heat collection. So there's a couple of ways in which we, sorry, let's go back to the previous slide there. Pardon, all went a bit too fast there. So we install boreholes. We also collect heat from underground aquifers and also from flooded mine workings. So these are different heat sources that we can use for the ground source heat pump. And we can also use water. So we can, instead of putting pipes in the ground, we can put pipes into a freshwater lock or a canal or the sea, and we can use the heat from that water resource to heat our homes. So I'll show you a few examples of some of these projects later on in the case study section. So we'll come on to that. So ground source heat pumps are the most efficient and reliable heating system that we have available today in the UK. It's unaffected by air temperature, and as a result, we get the lowest carbon emissions from this heating system and the lowest energy bills. So the energy bills will be comparable with gas, slightly lower than gas, but they will be the lowest end user bills of any heating system that you can install. It's ultra efficient and reliable, and these heat pumps sit inside the dwelling, so they're not sitting outside. It's not a fan that sits outside a house, so it's inside the house. So because of that, our heat pumps last around 20 to 25 years, so that's much longer than an air source heat pump and much longer than a modern condensing gas combi boiler as well. The ground array itself is a borehole with pipe in it, and it's the same type of pipe that you would use for water mains or gas mains. And once that's in the ground, and that would be there for 100 years or more. So this is a long asset life infrastructure that we're installing here. Once we install these heat pumps, we expect the ground array to be there in excess of 100 years, certainly throughout the lifetime of the building, and all that will be required is to replace the heat pump once every 20 or 25 years. There's no visual impact, so when you go to one of our sites, you won't actually see anything because the heat source is in the ground, the pipes are in the ground, so you can't see them, and everything is reinstated after installation, and the heat pumps themselves are in the houses themselves. So we've been delivering district heating and low carbon heating solutions in Scotland quite a lot over the last few years, and a lot of housing providers traditionally have used centralised district heating, and what that basically involves is a central heat source, using the picture in front of you just now, and that might be an air source heat pump, it might be a gas CHP boiler, it might be a biomass boiler, and what that does is that it heats hot water to a high temperature, could be up to 80 degrees Celsius. It then pumps that hot water through a series of insulated pipework to the end users. When we get to the end user, who could be a house or a care home or offices, each property will have a heat interface unit, which then delivers heat and hot water to that customer. A few disadvantages here is that if the central plant goes down, then all of the downstream customers are without heat. And that's a huge problem when you're a social housing provider and you get a call saying that there's no heating and hot water to your tenants. That's a big hassle and a bit of a nightmare. And also, if we're pumping high temperature hot water around pipework, we're losing heat through the ground, and this results in higher operating costs for the provider as well. And also in this situation, we have to meter each of the tenants and we have to provide them with billing. So that's very onerous for social housing providers. It is unreliable. It has a lot of consumer protection issues around it. And it's pretty much a bit of a hassle for social housing providers. So Kensa, we came up with this solution. and this is called a shared ground loop array. And essentially it is a group of boreholes. So the little diagram in front of you will show 5 boreholes connected to 4 properties, but it could be as simple as 1 borehole connected to 2 properties. And that is basically a communal array of boreholes, and the water circulating around that is typically around 10 degrees C. So there's no heat loss through that pipework, and the heat is only upgraded in the heat pump. So each home has an individual Kensa shoebox heat pump, which upgrades the heat. The beauty of that is there's no heat loss in the pipework, but also the heat pump is connected to the electricity supply, so that the tenant just pays their electricity bill as normal, and that's how they pay for the heat. It means that they have the freedom to shop around for their electricity supply, and it also means that the social housing provider does not need to bill any of their tenants. So it's low hassle, low operation costs. There's no external plants, there's no external pumps, there's nothing for the owner or operator of the system to look after. It's just the heat pumps in each individual home. And so this is the type of system that we've been putting into a lot of housing in the UK. It's applicable to all housing type. Go on to talk about that shortly. So just to summarise, we have a shared ground array, which is distributing ambient temperature heat to each heat pump. We have simple controls and radiators in each house. The scheme is eligible for funding. It's a low cost for the householder. So typically, if we're replacing electric heating, the tenant will save about 40 to 50% on their fuel bills. There's no plant room, there's no heat billing, and there's not very much for the social housing provider to maintain other than what's in the houses. So this is the Kensa shoebox heat pump, and here you can see a picture in front of you of the heat pump on the lower part of the cupboard, and then on top of that we have the hot water cylinder. So this must be in a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom property, as we need a slightly bigger hot water cylinder to provide all the hot water to that property. So there's a little bit of space needed to fit these, but the shoebox is the quietest and the smallest ground source heat pump available on the UK market. So for heating controls, there is nothing complicated here. We have normal radiators that are sized slightly bigger because we have a lower flow temperature. We have a standard thermostat and a standard timer, and TRVs on the radiators. So there's nothing fancy, it's just normal central heating controls as you would expect with a gas central heating system, basically. And here's some testimonials from some of the tenants. So these are tenants that will have had electric storage heaters in their houses beforehand, and we've taken that heating system out and put in the ground source. So the lady at the top reckons that she's saving over half on her electricity bill, and the lady at the bottom about 35–40%, and we'll look at a few case studies shortly. So drilling boreholes, we get a lot of questions about that, and if you have questions, please save them up for the end. And what we basically do here is that we will be drilling into the ground, typically 100 or 200 meters. We've actually recently, in one of our sites down in Blackburn, we've installed a borehole that was 300 meters. So if you imagine the highest tower block in Glasgow is 75 meters tall. So if you think about 3 or 4 times the height of those tower blocks but under the ground, that's how far we drill down. We then have plastic pipe, which has been made in our factory, and we bring that to site and we install that into the hole, and then we backfill the hole and fill it up with grout. We then connect the boreholes horizontally in trenches and bring them together to a manifold, which then connects to the properties. So this is a bit of the drilling. So what we have here is, this is not water coming up from the borehole. This is water that we are circulating into the borehole to bring up sands and fines and stones. We then take that off to what's called a mud puppy, which is essentially a skip with a big sieve in it, and that takes off all the fines and stones. We then recirculate the water back down the borehole, and to the right there you see the rods which we add on to the drill bit until we reach the required depth. On the right hand side you can see the drilling guys. They are installing the ground loops. So this is plastic pipework that they're installing into there. So I think this is a double probe, so we have quite a number of pipes there. Usually it's just a single probe that we'll just have 2 or 3 pipes going into that borehole. So Kensa Contracting, we do feasibility studies, geological surveys. We provide a whole project managed turnkey solution. Essentially, we design the systems, we select them, we install the ground array, we install the pipework and the radiators and all the controls for the householders. We actually do tenant liaison as well, so we'll come around and talk to all the residents in a street of housing and inform them of what's going on and when things will be taking place. We get support for our clients through the Renewable Heat Incentive. So historically, shared ground loop arrays have been eligible for the non-domestic RHI, which basically is an income over 20 years. So it's a non-metered income, so it's a guaranteed income over 20 years. And we'll do those applications on behalf of those clients. And then we'll also provide warranties and after-sales support for those systems as well. So I'm just going to go on now to talk about some examples and case studies of projects that we've done. The beauty of the shared ground loop system is that it's applicable to any type of housing that you can think of. So this is a project that we have here in Scotland. So this is in northeast Scotland, and this is it's an old converted school that the housing provider is refurbishing and turning into new flats. So what we've done here is that we've drilled through the granite and we've drilled 10 boreholes to service these new build apartments. The drilling is now complete, and the builder is now just finishing off the build, and then they will install the heat pumps, and that will be completed in the next few months. This is some of our bigger projects. So these are tower blocks in Sunderland that are owned by the Gen2 group. And instead of boreholes here, what we've actually done is we're extracting water from underground aquifers, and we're taking that water out and running it through a heat exchanger, and that's the heat that we are then taking off, piping through these tower blocks and into each individual flat. So the picture there, you'll see the Kensa shoebox in the foreground of your screen, and in the background you'll see a Sunamp phase change battery. So instead of an unvented cylinder, the customer's chosen to put in a phase change battery instead. This saves space and means that they don't have to do annual inspections of the hot water cylinder every year. They also have switchy thermostats, so that's a smart internet-enabled thermostat that each tenant has. And so this is a project that we have installed 364 properties across 7 tower blocks in Sunderland. This is another one of our tower block projects. So this is in North London. This is 8 tower blocks, 400 flats, and all these properties were previously heated by electric storage heaters. So we were able to save customers considerable amounts of money on their heating bills. There you can see it. Before they were paying £900 per year, and now they're paying as little as £350 per year for their heating and hot water. So yeah, 8 tower blocks, all retrofitted by Kensa Contracting, and yeah, a really good project, saving lots of carbon emissions, and we get an RHI return, so over £4 million of RHI for Enfield Council on this project as well. So this is another housing association in England. So what happened here was that we delivered a small pilot project for Together Housing, and off the back of that, they were so impressed with our solution that they decided to roll it out across their entire property assets. So we're halfway through installing up to 1,000 ground source heat pumps So we've already done about 500. Yep, 45% saving on running costs for all the tenants, and a considerable income through the non-domestic RHI, and that system will be there for a really long time. We won't be replacing the heat pumps for 20 to 25 years. So that's a great project. This is another small social housing project, 60 properties, 40 boreholes. Again, great saving against night storage heaters. And this project has won a few awards. I'm now going to just take you through a step-by-step situation on one of our projects. So this is sheltered housing. So there's a lot of elderly and vulnerable residents on this project, and they've all had night storage heaters, and it's bungalows. So bungalow sheltered housing on this project in Hertfordshire. And so the overall aim of this project was to reduce the running costs for the tenants, improve their comfort as well. A lot of the night storage heaters were running out of heat by the evening time, which is when the residents really needed heat. There was also some issues with damp and condensation in the houses, which caused respiratory issues for some of the residents as well. So it's really about improving the comfort and health of these residents, combating fuel poverty and reducing the carbon emissions as well, and minimising the lifetime cost of ownership for the housing association. So here the external work took 8 weeks to complete. We drilled 25 boreholes, so each borehole serves 2 properties. We then connected all that pipework up and drilled the boreholes and connected them all in trenches to pipework. And then the internals. So what we did here was that on the first day, once the ground array was installed, we installed the heat pump in each home and the hot water cylinder, thereby giving the tenant hot water. They then went wet, and then the next day we came back and removed the storage heaters and the wet system all in one day. So all the residents were in situ; they didn't go anywhere else. So we installed the whole project while they remained in situ, and this was in the heating season, so in the winter in 2017. So for fuel bills then, so looking at this, you can see here that with the higher efficiency of the ground source heat pumps, we're able to save big saving for residents, so over half, and compared to a gas central heating system, we're also a little bit cheaper than that. Yep, and for carbon emissions, so we're over 80% reduction in carbon emissions against gas central heating, and about 60 to 70% saving against night storage heating when we install these. So just some final words here. So these are from the residents after we installed these 49 bungalows with ground source heat pumps. These are some of the feedback that we had from the Stonewater residents. So they said they felt a lot more in control of their heating. It was more like gas central heating. It was a fantastic project, that they're really seeing a difference in their electricity bills and an increase in their thermal comfort. So I'd like to finish off by reminding you about some of the funding that's available in Scotland at the minute. So if you're interested in doing a low carbon heat project in some of your properties, please get in touch with us as soon as possible, and we can start that conversation. We can produce feasibility studies and take a look at the financial model for this project, and hopefully get some funding as well. And again, there'll be more funding opportunities next year from the Scottish Government. So it's a good idea to get in early and start the conversations and develop those. Start telling your colleagues about what what we're doing about low carbon heat and so on, and get those conversations moving so that when the funding rounds come out, we're ready to go. That's really important. So what I encourage you to do now is have a look at our website. So you can go on to kenzacontracting.com, and there really is a fantastic wealth of information there. There's lots of case studies. Today we've just talked about a couple, but we've done hundreds of these projects up and down the UK. So please go there, have a look. There's lots of great videos, animation, there's blogs, there's different solutions talking about extracting heat from mine water and using water for heating and open loop solutions. There'll be articles talking about also using ground source heat pumps for cooling and heating, and also using time of use tariffs to offset electricity costs and so on. So there's my contact details as well. Have a look at the website. Feel free to get in touch if you have any groups of houses you would like us to look at, and I'll hand over now back to Cassandra and the team, and we can run through any questions that you might have. So I'll just stop sharing my screen for a moment.
Thanks, Matthew. That was really interesting. It's nice having the little animations of the different
questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've got any questions at the moment. I'll leave it open for a little minute.
Sorry,
Question I was going to ask, obviously we're, as you mentioned in the last slides, we've got quite tight timescales for these funding schemes. What is the typical timescale in terms of the planning and feasibility side of things?
Oh, sorry, I think my internet just stopped there. I'm just going to take off my video in case. I think you were talking about timescales there, Cassandra. Yep, so in terms of timescales, we can do feasibility studies and estimated pricing really quickly and do that for the purposes of grant applications. We then have to design a project, so that could take roughly about 10 to 12 weeks to design. And then once we're on site, we would, again, a few weeks to drill the boreholes depending on the size project. And then we need to start doing the internal works as well. So we're installing pipework in that. So I would say once we're on site, we can deliver a project within about 3 or 4 months. But the really key thing is to start the conversation early. It will take us 10 to 12 weeks to produce a design for that project before we even get to site. So it's a really good idea to start the ball rolling early. For this particular fund, the project has to be commissioned by the end of November. So we can definitely deliver a really good project in that time. But I'd suggest that people start talking to us as early as possible.
Yeah, that sounds good. Any final questions before we finish? Matthew's obviously shared his contact details, and we'll share that out after the session as well. So if you have any other questions, then you can get in touch with Kenza. We'll also share the slides from the presentation as well. I'm sure that the lack of questions is probably a sign that you've just been very comprehensive in your presentation.
Yeah, sure. If anybody wants to give me a ring or drop me an email, please do. Yeah, very open to questions and discussions, and also we can produce feasibility studies and estimated quotations. We don't charge for that, and that's just something that we do for folk. You know, so that's fine. Yeah, feel free to get in touch.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. Then, just final kind of notes. Then, if anyone does have any suggestions for future webinar topics or other things you'd like to hear about, then please get in touch with SFHA. Our current webinar schedule is available on the What's On page on our website, and we're adding new things to that every day. Thank you again to Matthew for hosting the session today, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And we look forward to inviting you to another webinar soon.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.